Good afternoon. My name is Steve Arney. It's November 6, 2024. I'm here on behalf of the Friends of the Marshall Public Library, which is conducting an oral history project. And I'm here today to talk to Jack Davidson, a longtime resident of Marshall. So welcome, Jack.
Thank you.
And we'll just start off with telling us when and where you were born and something about your parents.
Okay, I was born in Terre Haute, Indiana, living in Marshall, July 19th, 1946. God, sorry about that. My mom told me that born in July, it was in St. Anthony's Hospital, and the nuns took care of her. She wasn't Catholic, so she felt a little bit out of place. Got a brother that's 2 years older than me. My father was in the Air Force. He was farmed on the farm, one of 5 kids. He was in the Air Force in World War II, stationed in Davis-Monthan, Tucson, Arizona. He was basically, he never went overseas. He trained pilots. My mom was from Rockville, Indiana, and she had, her mom had TB, and so they would make the pilgrimage to Arizona for her TB, because back then you laid in the hot desert sun to treat it. And she passed away when my mom was 5, and my mom stayed in Tucson with her grandma. And so her aunt in Rockville got ill, was in the Union Hospital, and my aunt, who's 2 years older than my dad, was her nurse. And they got to talking to one another, and well, my brother's in the Air Force, well, my little niecey's in Tucson, we ought to get them together. So they wrote to each of them. And my mom, after work one Friday, went to a USO dance, and standing on one side of the room, and my father's on the other side, and he walked up and he said, "Hi, I'm Don Davidson," and she says, "Well, I'm Gene Hudson." And they already knew each other, and that persisted, and a little bit later they got married, and my brother was born in 44, and they moved back, and so he was going to farm, and the farm wasn't big enough to support my grandparents and us, so he got a job in town as well. And when I was 8, we moved from the farm to Marshall, and lived here all my life except for a 10-year period where I went to college at Eastern, and then from there went to Chicago for 6 years, and got my taste of the city and thought this isn't it, and so I came back to Marshall and been here ever since. My parents were great people. My dad worked in the bank. My mom worked in the high school secretary for a number of years until she retired. And I have 2 loves in my life besides my family, and that's cars and art. So God let me be an art teacher for 8 years, and then he let me be a car dealer for about 30 years and run a service center and the Ford dealership.
I remember right about your dad, he had horses.
Yes.
He was into horse riding and being in the parades and everything, is that right?
Yes, he was the type of person that if he did something, he did it wholeheartedly. He didn't do it half-assed. And he was into horses. They had him on the farm. He really liked cowboying and the horses and all. And for years, he was the oldest living king of the cowboys of the 4th of July parade in Terre Haute. And he had a gold and silver belt buckle that he always wore, and my brother has that now. And then when we moved to town, I was going to build me a little car, and he took off with it and built quarter midgets and started the quarter midget racing in this area. And then in '63, when I was going to be a senior and my brother was at college, he went and played golf. And I remember Terry Stepp told the story that he played with him the first week that he started, and then 6 months later Terry come home from school and played with him, and he says, "Goodness, you've improved on." And he said, "Well, I should." He said, "I played every day for the last 6 months." And that's his pursuit of something. If he wouldn't do it half-assed.
I remember he was a pretty good golfer.
Yep.
Yeah. And do I remember right? He had a Palomino horse that he rode in the
Yes,
parades?
we had the big Palomino stallion was Apache, and then they got Starlight, which she was a Palomino mare, and then my brother wanted a horse, so my dad got a Shetland pony, borrowed a Shetland pony from Harry Baker, and they bred the Shetland pony with the Palomino stallion. Actually dug a stall on the side of the hill so that could happen, and they got a third horse named Joker. And Joker was a smaller, more white, not white, but a real light blonde type horse with forward stalking feet. And in the 125th sesquicentennial, my grandpa rode Apache, my dad rode Starlight, and my brother rode Joker. So they had 3 generations of men on 3 generations of horses.
Yeah. Wow, that's interesting. I didn't know all that. So when you moved to town, where did you live?
Right at the end of 5th Street. We sold that house after my mom passed away, so we lived there. We lived there from 56, 56 to, and I think it was in I forget what year she exactly passed, 2023 or something. So she lived there the whole time in town. So basically, when they came back from Arizona after the war, they lived in 2 houses the whole time and were married 60-some years.
There's 5th and Vine?
5th and Vine, yes. Where 5th Street goes down, if you don't make the turn, you go straight into the house.
Is that house still there?
Oh, yes. Yep. Rick Pine owns it now. Or, I'm sorry, Chris Pine, Rick's son.
So it hasn't really changed your neighborhood?
No.
I mean, neighbors have changed, obviously, but...
They had the area behind it was pretty bad when we moved to town, and they progressively tried to clean that up in the south end of town and have done so. And we watched Formulite go from Formulite to TRW, now to whatever that's a German term is it now, but we watched that. That was the main industry down in that. It's just down the street from us. And it was so neat because I rode a bus from 7.5 miles out in the country to town to go to school, and when we moved to town I only had to walk 1.5 blocks to school, and that was heaven for me.
That was over to the old South Side School?
Yes, the old South School. Never did get in the new school, always just went in the South School.
My brother taught the 6th grade there, but this would have been before your time. This would have been the early 50s.
Okay.
So you would just been a little kid then. But yeah, I went to the old Southside School myself for 3.5 years, and I was sorry to see those schools torn down.
Yeah.
But
my brother did go for 2 years, went to the North School, and I remember they had to actually move the desk and close the door, and then put the desk back in front of the door. That wouldn't get by in these days, but
yeah.
that's how crowded that school got.
But it's understandable why they had to be torn down, because the only way of escaping the case of fire was going down that outside fire escape.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Oh yes, it was terrible. I mean, had that old wrought iron fire escape in the old brick building. It was architecturally was really neat, but it just didn't function anymore for the school.
So how about your high school years? How were they?
Was great. I did get on the National Honor Society, I'm proud to say, and I wrestled the last 2 years of school, played football, played basketball. Loved to play basketball and wasn't worth a crap at it, and so I went on the wrestling team and got 3rd in the district, I think, when I was a senior. Of course, I worked for Jim Prevost at the Marathon Service Station the 2 years, and I bought me a 57 Chevy, and then at the end of that summer before college started, I sold it, and that got $800 out of it, and that paid for the first 2 years of college. I had a $75 scholarship, and so, you know, I worked at school. High school I enjoyed. We had a lot of stuff. Artistically, there wasn't much going on. I had a couple art classes, but I painted the senior cords. We had about 113 students, and I painted like probably 110 cords because the girls' skirts, they would change boyfriends, and so they get me to paint them a new skirt with a new name on it.
Oh.
So that was fun.
Well, that's
And
interesting.
then I went to Eastern after 64, and was one of the few people I know that I graduated on time with the same major and minor that I started. I was majored and minored in art, and became a teacher then in the south side of Chicago.
So you didn't like Chicago? You only lived
No.
there 6 years?
Nope, 6 years, and got married and had a couple kids, and it just wasn't. I just really missed the complexity, or the lack of complexity in your life, the simplicity of Marshall or a small town. It just so happened we end up back in Marshall, but it really makes you appreciate the town that much more. So about everybody needs to go live in a big city just to get that out of their system.
Yeah. This is high school, right?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
taught
taught in
high
high
school?
school. Yeah, the high school had 2,400 kids.
Yeah.
Marshall was 2,800 at the time in the town. So
What was the name of the school?
Hillcrest High School, Midlothian School District. There was Jim Friedenberger, that's a Marshall, former Marshall resident, was a teacher in Tinley Park, which Tinley Park and Hillcrest and Bremen schools were all in that same Midlothian School District. So here Jim was up there. He's quite a few years older than me, but he taught up there.
So you got connected with Jim?
Yeah, I knew him.
Yeah, I
I'd
remember
seen-
Jim. He
yeah.
was a great football player back in the...
Now, he was way
late
before my
40s.
way before my time.
Yeah.
But you know what? And sat down at the first assembly with all the staff at the school. And here I thought, boy, I'm moving to Chicago, and sat down, and this guy come up and plopped down beside me. He goes, "So you're from Marshall?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well," he said, "My wife's from Martinsville." And it was John McFadden, who ended up retiring and moved back to Martinsville. He's gone now. But we became very good friends. We got a kick out of the fact that both of us went to Chicago to get away from the small town, and then we liked each other because we were from the small towns.
Yeah. You know, there was another guy from Marshall who taught up there, Don Miller. Did you know Don Miller? He taught at Blue Island, I think.
Yep. Blue Island was over northeast of me.
Yeah.
I knew him, but I never did hook up with him and see him.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Three boys from Marshall wound up teaching high school in Cook County. So, okay, you came back, and where did you live then?
Rented a little house, and then things changed personally, and got divorced, and raised the two girls, and got remarried, and we had the big house up on 7th Street across from Tarbell's that Thomas Delaney had built for his son as a wedding present, and we lived there quite a few years because we had 5 kids and between us, and so as they grew up and left the house, then we moved out west of town and bought a little place with 3.5 acres, and I still live there. I built another house on it, and so we married to my present wife, Lissa, for 33 years now, and we live in a house that we built. They call it a log cabin, but it's a wave-sided house on about 2.5 of the acres. And really, it's kind of a antique type home. We live with antiques and really enjoy it. And there's enough room in it, so when any of the kids or the 12 grandkids come to visit, we got room for them. So.
What? You said a wave-sided house?
Yes, it's white oak and red oak, and they just rough cut it at the sawmill and leave the bark edge on it, and it almost looks like logs, but you can put it on a frame home, so it's very fuel efficient, but it has that rustic type look to it.
I see. Kind of like siding.
Yeah, it's just a wave siding is what they call it.
Okay. So you brought a picture of your family here.
Yep.
5 daughters you've got there.
Yep. Lissa has 3 and I have 2, and they go from my Jennifer and Gretchen, and Jennifer has 2 children, and Evans graduated from IUPUI and presently working in Indianapolis for the state, and Megan is getting ready to graduate this May from Missoula in Missouri. college there, and she talks of aspirations of maybe moving to Texas. And then my other daughter, Gretchen, is a pediatrician, and they live in Wilmington, North Carolina, and he's a cardiologist, and she's got 5 kids that she's homeschooled. And the girl is the oldest, and she works at Disney World, and John is the next, and he is presently in France. He's a French minor, and he's studying France on the study program from September to December. And then Jack, my namesake, is a extremely intelligent guy, and that's not because his name's Jack, but he's a surfer and getting ready, trying to decide what college he's going to. He's a senior. And then she's got Charlie, that's a hell of a baseball player, and he's in the, let's see, he'll be a freshman. And then Wesley, who is 8 right now, going on 9. He loves to play baseball as well, but real personable. And so they're very successful. And then we got Lori, Lissa's oldest, that has a gym and a gymnastics center in Paris and lives in Terre Haute. Very successful at that. She's been doing that for 30 years. And then got Kara that lives in Longview, Texas, and she's got 3 boys. And her youngest is getting ready to graduate from high school. Unbelievable baseball player. He's a pitcher. And then there's Amy that lives in Fort Worth. She owns her gymnastics center, very successful. Her son has just finished 1,000 hours flying, works for American Airlines. He's 23 at the airport at DFW, and he's aspiration to be a commercial pilot, and he's taking his check ride to become a certified flight instructor today. And then her daughter Amy's daughter Skylar lives in Tulsa, going to school. She's going to be an air traffic controller, and she graduates from that this May, and then she'll spend 3 years at a tower under instruction before she does that full time. So we got 12 kids, very proud of them. And that's what life's all about.
Yeah, you said your mother and dad are in that picture with them.
Yep.
And you said that's the last time all 5 of them got back
That's the
together?
only time in 33 years that we've had all 5 girls together at the same time. It was at my 50th birthday party. Lissa had made a surprise party out of it, and all of them got to make it, but we've never been able to coordinate all 5 of them together. Of course, Gretchen now lives 14 hours away east, and 2 of the girls live 14 hours away west. 2 of them do live in Terre Haute, but to get all of them together, we just haven't, it's never ever happened. So that's that's the only picture we have of that as well.
Well, that's the way things are today.
Oh yeah.
I have 2 daughters, and they're 2,000 miles apart also, so
Yeah.
I know what you're going to. So when you moved back to Marshall, what did you do then?
Well, I taught school at Schulte in Terre Haute, and I was the art teacher at the high school, and the Catholic system couldn't afford my full salary, so they parted me out to the junior highs. So I would have the Catholic junior high schools would have an art teacher once a week, so I would teach at the high school in the morning and go to one of the junior highs in the afternoon. And I did that until I got divorced. That was 2 years, and started working for Don Stanfield at the Chevy Garage, and then worked there, and Shannon Ashley bought it out, and I sold cars for him. And then I went into business for myself, running the marathon station at the interstate. And then after a couple of years, I opened the one downtown, so I ran 2 of them. And then gas got high, and a lot of things were changing, so I opened my own garage by the Dairy Queen. And then got an offer, because the stepdaughter married Tony George. I got an offer to work in the restoration center at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So I worked there one summer, and then the home life fell apart. So I came back and started working back for Mooney's at his dealership down here. And Mike Mooney, he had a small dealership down here, and I ran it for him, and then started working for Fred Barth, selling for him, and that progressed to the point of selling. And then when Jerry Forsyth bought him out, then in 2000 I started running that dealership and ran it till I retired when I was 70. And so it's been a very nice life because of like I said previously, the passions that I have in life. I was able to do that for a living rather than have to sit in a factory and punch a time clock.
Well, you've had quite a variety of occupations over the years, Jack. Have you counted them all up?
Oh, no, everything just kind of evolved from one thing to another.
Yeah. So, how did you like selling cars?
Oh, I loved it. People asked me after I retired, they said, now, do you miss it? And I said, I don't miss the business because the business changed so drastically. When I started selling in 1976, we would sit down and write out the deal, and it was extremely personal with you and the customer. And when I got out, it was so devoid of that personal quality because of the computers, and things were just so much different. I really, really miss the people because I really like that interaction, and I think that's why. That sounds arrogant, but I think that's why I was successful at it. To do it as long as I did it, you have to be successful at it. And to be a commissioned salesman, you go into you're getting paid for what you do. You don't get paid just because you're there. And it was fun, and it was a lot of work, and it took time, but the pay was very, very good. And Fred was a very good person to work for. He was a typical businessman, and that's what I tried to be when I was running the store.
Well, speaking from across the table, I bought 2 cars from you, and I can say that they were both pleasant experiences.
Thank you.
Yeah. One thing you mentioned, you got out of the filling station business because the gas got too high. What was the price of gas then?
Well, when in high school, it was the cheapest I remember. It was 19 cents for regular and 31 cents for ethyl, high octane. And I remember that when it went to 50 cents when I was living in Chicago, and that was in the 80s, and they had the oil shortage and everything, and I even got docked at school because I was late for work. I got caught in a gas line, and I had to get gas, and the gas lines were just long enough, and I was about 20 minutes late to school, and I really got ostracized by the principal for that. But I remember when that gas went to $1 a gallon, and people the dealers would not put $1. They would put 99.9. They just didn't want to do $1. But then we found out that after you put the $1 on, it didn't matter if it was $1 or $1.05 or $1.06, as long as you stayed below $1.10. And so there was a lot of psychological part of it. Then we went to self-serve, and you had 2 islands. You had a self-serve island and a full-serve island. And the full-serve, we went out, washed your windshield, checked your oil, whatever you needed, pumped your gas, and took care of everything. Self-serve, you did it yourself. Nobody helped you. Well, it found out that in the economy that time, you sold your self-serve gas at a loss because 30% of your sales was on the self-serve side. So you sold that 30% of your gas at a loss, and 70% was, and you could raise your full serve price way high enough to compensate. So actually you were selling gas less than what you paid for it on the 30%, but then as time progressed and those full serve islands went away, then you had to start being a little bit more frugal with how you priced your product.
Well, why did that change? Why did the full service go away?
Because it's a whole underlying structure. The thing of the guy at the gas station taking care of your car just went away. Cars started running 100,000 miles very easily. Only people could work on them were certified people because they were computer controlled. So in '81, when the cars got computer controlled, then that hometown or that small mechanic had to kind of go by the wayside. All he could do was change your oil and filter. He couldn't really work on your car. So that opened up the avenue for the convenience store to sell gas. And so they sold it in high volume, and sometimes they didn't care whether they made money on gas because they were charging so much money for the stuff inside the store. So when you had a convenience store selling gas, and the guy running the gas station and trying to make a living there couldn't sell enough gas competitively, and he couldn't get enough service inside, so those have just gone away. You don't find a service station anymore. You find a gas station or a gas store.
Right. Yeah. So the whole culture of competing
Yes.
and furnishing gasoline just kind of changed.
Yeah. Yeah. If you would have told me back in the 70s that I would go to a gas station with no money and buy gas in my car and not talk to anybody, I would have told you were crazy. But I haven't talked to anybody when I bought gas for probably 2 years.
I remember in high school and maybe a little later, I'd buy $1 worth of gas.
Oh, yeah.
And $1 worth would last me quite a while.
Yeah.
But the dealer the operator wouldn't let you put it in himself.
Oh, yeah.
Or yourself.
Yeah, you
He
could.
had to come out and put it in
Yes.
for you for $1.
I remember being at Charleston at college and needed to come home, and I had 57 cents, and I bought 57 cents worth of gas, put it in my Corvair, and drove it all the way home.
Yeah, those days are long.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So, art had been a big part of your life, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, well, when did you find out that you had artistic talent?
Well, my father was a very insightful person, and he could really draw horses. And I remember sitting in church, and he would sketch a horse, and that really fascinated me. And I'd always just, for some reason, would draw. And so when I started drawing, he quit drawing. And he wouldn't draw anymore. I would always draw. And so when we raced the quarter midgets, I painted the flames on it at 8, 9 years old, and then painted the numbers on it. And it was just a progressive thing. Something that I always did and just always wanted to do. And I airbrushed the cords, like I said previously, for the kids at school, and helped decorate the prom, and it took any art classes I had. So when I retired from the dealership, Joe Rich had asked me to join the Gaslight Art Colony, and we're celebrating our 15th year this year. And Joe and I are the two of the original board members. And so I participate with maybe to judge a show or to help with a show or just be on the board and try and direct things. It's a nonprofit entity. And being here 15 years, it's done pretty well. So that's helped me keep connected. And then the chamber decided to do the Marshall Lions, the big fiberglass lions around town. And so I was blessed that I was the only one that really wanted to do them. Everybody else would just reluctantly do them. So we have 50 some, and I've done about half of them. So I painted about 25 of them around town.
I didn't know you had done so many.
Yeah, and didn't help with the murals. The murals were an outside source, and that was kind of out of my realm. But bring the lions out to my shop, and that's my advantage. I can take them out to my shop and paint them at my leisure and what I wanted to do. And the other people were having to do it at the art center. They didn't have a facility. So I kind of jumped on it and do that, and everybody seems to be happy about it.
You have a couple of paintings in there, hanging in the art colony, don't you?
No. Let's see what I did. I got some ceramics in there because I did the ceramics class. That's about all I got.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. We're in the Sunny Daily room at the Marshall Public Library, and am I told that you had this letter sweater hanging on the wall in your possession? My
mom and Barb Daly were very close friends, and Barb had her brother Sonny letter sweater, and so she said, and she gave it to my mom, and my mom said, "You ought to have this." And so I had it in my closet, and it was just kind of a neat piece. I got my letter jacket at home and stuff. And so when they had the Sunny Daily room, I thought, now this is the best thing. So I brought it up here and donated it to the library. And it's just kind of neat because he really didn't wear it very much, it looks like.
Well, I know. I was friends with Sonny in high school. Yeah, and I remember that flat top. Got a picture on the wall here of him in high school.
I had a flat top. Didn't you have a flat top?
Well, yeah, I did too.
Everybody
That's
did.
what all the kids had.
Oh, yes.
But yeah, For listeners who may not know who Sonny Daly is or was, he donated in his will a substantial amount of money to the library here, and so they thought it would be wise to commemorate his for doing that by naming this room after him and hanging this framed picture, I guess, for lack of a better word, on the wall, which is high school letter sweater, big Marshall M on it, and a photograph of him, and also a copy of his book, which he wrote when he was at the Handy Art Colony, or not Art Colony, Writers Colony.
Writers Colony, yeah. With James Jones.
Pardon?
With James Jones.
With James Jones and a couple of other writers who have had their books published. So, yeah, it's interesting that you came into possession of that letter sweater.
Yeah.
After, what it's been?
Well, it's 54.
70 some years.
70 years, because, yeah, that says 54 on the sweater, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you and Lisa been married 33 years.
Yes.
You gonna make it to 50?
Oh, yeah. I hope the hell so. I'm very healthy, feel very good. 1 week in 22 in October, on Monday I cut down 3 trees and started cutting them up. And on Tuesday I worked for the Knowles Auction Company setting up a sale. And Wednesday I was finishing cutting the trees up, and I was packing up the motorhome. We were going to go camping on the weekend. And so Wednesday afternoon I walked across the yard, and there was a burning sensation right at my sternum. And I thought, boy, that hurts. About 15, 20 seconds and it was gone. And okay. And so Thursday morning, Lissa was already up, and I got up and I had that same burning sensation and set up, and I thought, I'm going to be in the hospital in about an hour. So I got dressed real quick and went upstairs, and I said, we got to go. And she goes, well, I got a hair appointment at 8:30. And I said, no, I'm in trouble. We got to go. And so she took me to the hospital, and I was having the Widowmaker, 100% blockage on one and 90% on another. And so they put 2 stents in, and the 100% block, they left it alone. And when they were doing in the cath lab, when they were doing the surgery, I was content. God was holding me. Maybe it was the drugs I was on, but I don't believe that. Never hurt anything. Recovered from it. Last year, the doctor said, well, I don't want to see you for a year. And I've just been doing great ever since. But the purpose of the whole story is that I did all that week. And if I hadn't paid attention to pain, I wouldn't be here today, because they said I had about a 20-minute window.
Really?
And so it's, other than having a detached retina and having eye surgery, that's the only thing that's wrong with me. So 78 years old, I feel very good. My grandfather, he lived to be 97. His brother was 97. His other brother, Will, was 93. His sister Nellie Strom was, I think, 91 or 92. And he had one brother, P.A. Davidson's dad, Joe. He died, I think it was 76, and my grandpa always said that he was just a young pup when he died.
P.A. was your grandfather's brother?
P.A. was P.A.'s father. Joe and my grandfather were brothers.
Okay.
So that's...
Your grandfather was Arch?
Yes, my grandfather was Arch. Oldest brother was Will. Then they had Dick, lived out west of town, and Aunt Nellie, that developed all the Stroms in West Union. So, and then my wife Lissa her father was one of 11. So if you want to talk to us, you want to be real careful, because we're probably related to somebody in town between the Smitleys and us.
I realize. Remember all the Smitleys,
Oh, yeah.
I think.
Always told the story that in high school, one year there was a Smitley in every grade in school, and then sometimes there would be 2 Smitleys in one grade, but every grade of school had a Smitley in it.
Yeah. Her dad was Bill, right?
Yes,
Bill Smitley?
Bill Smitley. Mom was Elaine, and she was a Shawver, and her father, Lissa's grandfather, was county sheriff, Willie Shawver. He was the county sheriff back in the 50s.
Mm-hmm. You know, thinking back all these years, over these years you've lived, Jack, are there some historical events that stand out in your mind?
The sesquicentennial 125th anniversary of Marshall, that was really a neat deal and really well played out deal in town. I remember them burying the box in the courthouse square, the time capsule.
What year was that?
That
it would have been
it's in like 62, 63, maybe somewhere around there. I'd have to look.
125 years from 1835 would have been maybe 1960.
Yeah, right at that. I was in high school.
Yeah.
Remember them building the pool. My father was a lifeguard out there. He'd a member of the Lions Club, and my mom worked in the basket room. Great story there is that kind of got a habit in the summer that at 5 o'clock when they closed, Jim Jones would drive his blue Imperial convertible over there at the top down, and he would sit on the back seat looking over the windshield. And when everybody was out of the pool, my dad would wave him in, and he would let Jim swim for an hour after the pool closed. And I always teased my mom that she always came home an hour late from the pool because she had to sit there and watch Jim swim in his bikini swim trunks that he wore. He was quite the guy.
I remember that. I remember him doing swan dives off that
Oh, yeah.
diving board.
And,
And his wife would sit, she was from Italy, as I recall. Pretty nice looking woman.
Yes. Yeah.
Sit along the side of the pool.
My grandfather always told stories. Of course, he was 63 when I was born, and he told the story that supposedly Lincoln was riding through Marshall. He was on the circuit court riding his horse, and I don't remember which relation it was. My grandfather, little girl, he picked her up and put her up on the horse and supposedly rode up to the courthouse and put her down when he come to town. So I can't validate that story, but it sure is a neat story. And then he also told the story, for years he told that his family went to Kentucky from Pennsylvania. And the reason that the ancestor left Pennsylvania is that he favored Washington, so he gave all the family cattle to Washington to feed the troops. And the family found out about it and disowned him, so he came to Kentucky. And so I always thought that was a good story too. Well, my daughter Gretchen was home one Christmas and ran a genealogy, and it put my family in Pennsylvania at that time during the Revolutionary War.
Is that right?
So that could be a valid story that was always handed down.
Mm-hmm. On the Davidson side?
Yeah. And
what European country did you come from?
I've always thought maybe British. I never did find out.
Yeah.
My grandma was Stookie, and she was a nurse at Union Hospital in 1911 when Union first started. And my grandfather would take the horse and buggy and go the lower Terre Haute Road to Terre Haute and take her out, and then take her back to when she had to get back to the dormitory, and then he would sleep in the buggy and the horse knew the way home back to lower Terre Haute Road. And he said he'd get home about 5, and about 5:30 the old man come in and wake him up to go to work, and he said good thing I'd slept in the buggy on the way home and had the horse.
Yeah.
But
okay, what about national events that have happened over the years?
I remember being a senior in high school, and McNary called us all to the gym to assembly, and that's when he told us that Kennedy was shot. And then visiting the kids in Texas, we did go to Dallas one day and went up in the books depository, and where the window that Oswald looked out at and shot, and saw the grassy knoll and saw the whole deal. That was that's one of those history things that you'll always remember where you were when this happened. Really always listened to the 500.
The 500 race?
Yeah, the 500 race, always listened to it.
Yeah, well, been a lot of things over the years. I remember especially the Kennedy assassination. My wife and I didn't do anything, I don't think, for that weekend except watch television.
Yeah. Oh, I remember coming home from school, my mom just be sitting there crying. The television was showing everything, and it was a very big thing in history. It affected everybody. There was no Democrats or Republicans when he got shot.
So your dad joined the Air Force during the war?
I think it was. The war started December 41, and I think he joined in 42, and ended up. I don't know the transport part of how he ended up in Tucson, but it was at Davis-Monthan, and he was being a cowboy and everything. He was always pretty meticulous about his dress and everything, and I think that was one thing that helped him become an officer in the Air Force. And he told the story that one time him and another guy, they were flying the two-man plane, and they said they got lost, and so they were flying down in the southern Texas, Arizona, or southern Arizona, New Mexico area, and so they saw a base down there, so they landed, and he said that plane was kind of notorious for leaking oil, and he said as soon as they landed, the crew come running out and said, "Oh, you got an oil leak?" He said, "Yeah, could you check that for us?" He says, "Now, where are we at?" And, "Oh, well, you're at such and such base." "Oh, okay." Well, then that told them where they were at, so it looked okay, so they took off. So they got out of getting lost, but they were flying and got lost.
Well, did he have flying experience before he joined the Air Force?
No, he got his hours in the Air Force. Yeah.
That's interesting.
And, of course, when he came home, he had to farm and had a family, and so he never followed up with the pilot part of it. Always liked that, but he just never did.
Okay. Well, what would you say about Marshall now as opposed to what it was like when you were growing up here?
It's like everything's the same but different. When I was growing up, Marshall was still a great town. I remember Christmas in downtown Marshall. It was all decorated. Downtown Terre Haute was all decorated. Nice small town, great place to live. You had friends. We played kick the can. We ran around at night. We rode our bikes behind the bug spraying truck. And if you don't know what that is, they used to drive around with a pickup truck from the city, and they had a big bug sprayer to get rid of the mosquitoes. And the kids would ride in that spray and in and out. And if you think about that now, why are we still alive? We all should have died before we were 40. But Marshall's still that way. It's still a great small town. There's a lot of small town consciousness. I've had a lot, when I worked in Terre Haute, the different times, people in Terre Haute would always undoubtedly comment, "Well, I've been to Marshall. It is such a nice, clean town. All the yards are mowed and everything's clean." And that has always been one of the aspects of Marshall. There's a gentleman that was written up in the paper, and he lived in Reno, Nevada, and him and his wife were looking at a place. They thought Missouri. They were driving around looking at towns, and when they found Marshall, that's where they live now. They
Really?
moved to Marshall. Bob Dog, the plumber.
Oh.
And they came to Marshall, and he said it was such a nice looking place, and everybody we talked to was great, and they live here now. So
He advertises as Boss Dog, the plumber?
Bob Dog.
Bob Dog,
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
And
That's
but
interesting. I didn't know that.
yeah, but like I said, everything's the same but different, and it's just the library is growing. This used to be the Kroger grocery store. When the movie theater burnt down, my dad got us both out of bed, and we all loaded up in the car, and we stood in the courthouse square in our pajamas watching it burn down. And I remember the front facade fell across the street when it burnt. Kenny Little was one of the firemen, and they were running for their lives because all the bricks were coming down. I remember you go to Marshall at Christmas time, and it was all decorated, like I said, and the stores were open. It's always had Friday night football games, and several years we had really good football teams with Ron Murphy and John Bush and my brother. And
Over the years, had a lot of good football teams.
a lot of interesting football coaches. My dad was good friends with J.O. Jackson and George Gaddis. And
Yeah, I remember. I didn't live here at the time, but I remember the Lions Club used to invite famous football players down for a dinner. I think Mike Ditka actually came once.
Duffy Doherty did. He came. He spoke at Tom's Cafe. I think Ditka did come down. I was at the Duffy Doherty thing. I can't remember, but the Lions Club has always been such a strong part. Of course, the Marshall Lions and the Lions Club always thought that was a nice fit.
Yeah, for sure. So, modern conveniences are totally different now. Have you been able to keep up?
That's why I retired. At the dealership, I would go to the auction and buy cars. And the last 2 years I was running the dealership, the Ford store, never left the store. I just got online and bought the cars and had guys go over and pick them up, but it was all online. I never had a cell phone most of my life, and for me, that's hard to believe now. But in the country, we had a party line, and if it 2 shorts and a long was my grandpa's phone, and so if you dialed somebody, you ring it 2 shorts and a long, and they would pick up the line, and you either hear click click where other people were picking up to see who was calling, and then the greatest thing, I was living in Chicago, and this was in '68 and '69, and my aunt was working for Western Electric in Oklahoma City, and my mom was living in Marshall, and my aunt was the switchboard operator for Western Electric. So she would call my mom, and then she would call me, and all 3 of us would talk. And if she got busy, she would just leave us hooked up and unhook. She would unhook and talk to then she'd come back on. We thought that was the most fantastic thing. Wow. If you would have told me now that I could send you a picture or find my way, I don't need a map anymore, my goodness.
No, well, kids today wouldn't believe that those old-fashioned phones we had in the country where other people could listen in on the conversation if they wanted to.
It was a tin can on a string.
Yeah, yeah. Well, privacy's a big deal, with kids today.
Goodness. Yeah, it was funny. Yeah.
Well, anything else you got to say, Jack, about Marshall or anything?
No, it just it's just like you just make friends, and those friends transcend religion, transcend politics, all that. You're friends, and my brother lives in Columbus, Georgia, and had lived there years. And he'd come home, and I'd speak to somebody, and he goes, "You saw them yesterday. What are you speaking to them?" I said, "Well, you speak to everybody." "What do you do that for?" And of course, he's so conditioned because he lives in Columbus, a bigger city, and you just don't do that. But heck, in town, me and him would go somewhere, and, "Hey, how you doing? Hi, Steve, how are you?" And then the next day, "Hi, Steve, how are you?" And we just talked to him yesterday. I said, "Yeah." I said, "Don't want him to be mad at me. I'm going to talk to him today."
Right. Well, certainly appreciate your participating in this project, Jack.
I know when I get home, I'll think of 10 other things I should have told you.
You might want to tell your daughters that at some point, I'm not sure how long it takes, this will be on the internet.
Oh, okay.
And they can listen to it. They'll go into the Marshall Public Library website, I think. I can't give you any more details than that, but I know it's out there. And young people today don't have any problem with the internet.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, thanks for...
I appreciate the time, Steve, very much.
Very interesting, and we'll see you around.
Okay. Now, do you want to copy that picture?